This was probably one of the most exciting aspects of the film for me as a director because it's like we don't have the resources to shoot this thing the way maybe traditionally it would be shot. My name is Robert Machoyan. I am writer, director, and editor of The Killing of Two Lovers.
My name is Oscar Ignacio Jimenez, and I'm the director of photography of The Killing of Two Lovers.
My name is Peter Albrechtsen. I was the sound designer and sound re-recording mixer of The Killing of Two Lovers.
So yeah, my initial idea for this scene was, since we're early in the film, I wanted to establish the distance between the kind of spaces, him at his dad's house and the house that is his that he's no longer living in. And so I wanted these kind of extended shots to kind of establish that space that we'd be living on this block for the most part. So that's kind of what influenced or what I brought to Oscar as I kind of discussed how the scene would, how I envisioned this.
I mean, I would say that this scene just brings back some crazy memories about how Robert almost lost his fingers. We were shooting this out of our camera truck, our camera van, I guess, and so we had to prop. It was a Sprinter van, and so we had to prop open the doors, and there was like a split second where the door just snapped open or snapped closed and almost took Robert's fingers away. But I'm just adding that because of we didn't use any dolly, we didn't use any gimbals. It was just a tripod on the back of a Sprinter van with and just hoping that the pavement was smooth enough to take away any of the rumbles.
Yeah, the other thing I want to add, as I kind of wrote this scene, Peter and I discussed this film in the script writing stage and talked about how sound would play such a significant role. I wasn't exactly sure what we would do. We had worked together previously, and I knew I wanted to push kind of what we had done farther. But I knew when Oscar and I were shooting these, we were laying the groundwork in a way that really required Peter to bring kind of his ideas and some of what we discussed to the table.
I mean, something that really is one of the many amazing things about this sequence from a sound point of view is how little is actually said. It's so much about physical action and so much about images and so much about like the evocative power of sound instead of having a lot of dialogue. I mean, you have a little bit of dialogue in the store, but apart from that, it's really so much about like the inner state of David, which is so much like told through these very like emotional approach to sound, where I mean the sound of the engine when he's driving towards the store is like making all kinds of weird sounds, like screeches and weird noises. And when we're actually in the store, we removed a lot of the dialogue, and we kind of came inside of David's head and had his perspective on the scene. So in that sense, like sound had this very evocative, emotional role in this whole sequence.
You know, one of the things I do remember shooting this too is just kind of like we see this journey, we see this process of David and what's going to happen. This is right after he just discovered Chris and Nikki, his wife, sleeping together, and so we kind of got a glimpse of what David is potential of, and so just staying with David that time, and especially going up to the market with the camera behind his head, we've given the audience all the pieces. I think there is kind of like the temptation to show a reaction shot of what David is looking at, but I think removing that a reaction from to show the audience is more beneficial for them, because then they can start kind of concluding with their own emotions, and they start filling in the gaps, which for me was more powerful than just showing kind of like what David is feeling, or showing what he's feeling.
Yeah, this part in particular. Oh, go ahead, Peter. Sorry.
Clayton's performance is so physical. I mean, the way that you can look at his face and read so many emotions into it, it's pretty amazing. The subtleties, I mean, both being like aggressive sometimes, but also fragile at the same time often. It's really amazing. And that also really, I mean, that really benefits from like not having dialogue, but really like we're able to look at Clayton, like on David's face, and really, I mean, you get all these emotions.
Yeah, this was probably one of the most exciting aspects of the film for me as a director, because it's like we don't have the resources to shoot this thing the way maybe traditionally it would be shot. And I had watched Ida, and there's a car accident scene in there where that just kind of, it happens, and then all of a sudden they're pulling the car out, and I was so impressed how they had such a big event with similarly not having the resources. So as we kind of started to approach this scene specifically where he's chasing Derek, I started to really think about how important it would be that we weren't dealing with a lot of different shots, but that we were very static, and kind of what Peter had said, that we were just on his face, so that we're reading the emotional progression that's kind of happening kind of throughout that scene specifically. And then the sound design would be required not only to get inside of David's head itself, but then also to amplify the car accident in and of itself, because we didn't have a spare car, we didn't have there was nothing, and we would have had to abandon this if we had attempted any other way than the way we chose to shoot it.
For me, one of the things about the dynamics of the whole film, that it has the boldness to be quiet, and it's also at moments extremely like intense. Like Robert and I had a lot of fun with, like, every time the engine kind of revs up, it's not just an engine, it's an animal scream, it's a lion's roar, a tiger's roar, to really give the car this kind of power and masculinity, and also just make it a little dangerous.
Peter nailed it with I think that the car being an animal, I think again, it felt very conscious on set. That's what it was. It's this tiger or this lion, or I don't know, this predator just stalking, and it becomes both aggressive and also tame, because you see like this these two contrasting, one where you see it with Derek, and then the car with his kids. Like it's a loving home. It feels very warm. So I don't know, a lot of humanism to a car or a truck, I mean.
But in this sequence in of itself, you have so many different emotions. You have this fear emotion, you have this coffee shop. He's like just completely, his masculinity is kind of diminished as this guy towers over him and makes him serve him coffee. And then you get this chase, and all of these things are happening. There are all these emotional movements that are occurring. And again, the sound design being necessary to help us as an audience empathize with David, because in the reality of all of these events, this is ridiculous, and us as an audience could easily be like, I'm out. Like, I don't support what this guy is doing or the actions at all. And instead, through the merging of image and sound, we arrive at this very interesting empathy.